Good evening, Kellie Jay.
Good evening.
Here we go again, eh? Another one. What are your feelings about this? I mean, this just beggars belief, doesn't it? That these woke police forces, because some rapist says I identify as a woman, that goes down in the record books as a rape by a woman. Which is not legally possible. And so we have warped data about female crimes. The poor female gender is getting lumbered with all these awful offences that weren't committed by women. And yet the police are so woke that all you have to do is say, I identify as a woman, and they actually treat you as if you are 100% a woman. And the Home Secretary's had enough of this. What are your feelings about this?
Well, thank goodness she's finally had enough of it. It's been going on for such a long time. It's right the way through the judiciary, I'm afraid. It's not just recording male crime as committed by women. It's also a failure to recognise those men throughout the court process. Women who have been subjected to male violence are expected to call the perpetrator with female pronouns and so on throughout the court cases. It's just never ending. There's a woman called Maria McLachlan who was assaulted by a man called Tara Wolf. And throughout the court case, she got penalised by the judge because she didn't use the pronoun she for the man that punched her to the floor. So it's really, really serious. I mean, it's ridiculous, but the consequences for women are really serious.
There was a transgender prisoner called Karen White, who identified as a woman and was therefore transferred to a women's jail, whereupon I have to say she sexually assaulted two women in the prison and still has to be referred to as she. I mean, we have to go along with the rules. These are the rules that affect journalism as well as the legal system. But shall we say that I think it's worth raising your eyebrow about this kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are pressure groups that were set up specifically to mutilate language and to silence people from being able to speak very plainly when it comes to who is a man and who is a woman. And obviously, you're duty bound to participate in that lie because you're not allowed to use accurate language, whether you like it or not. And I think it's time we just started unraveling this absolute nonsense. To mask male violence by using female pronouns and female language is quite a disastrous thing to do and leads to, proper real life consequences. But Kevin, we've talked about this before, and this is what I call the fat end of the thin end of the wedge argument. And that is the mutilation of our language and not being able to be really accurate. It all comes back to those first little glimpses of what we feel is kind and polite.
I totally agree. And when it comes to compiling crime statistics, I mean, this goes beyond just the mutilation of language and the ludicrous wokery. And this becomes quite dangerous because it's quite important to find out who's committing what crimes and where they're being committed, by whom. And these are police forces who are almost willfully recording these offences in a wrong and inaccurate way. Extraordinary.
Well, they're totally captured, aren't they? So as far back as I believe it was 2012, a police officer who was male, who identified as a woman, took the police force to court for discrimination because he wasn't allowed to intimately search female suspects like actual female police officers. And so that was a real kind of marked event in obscuring male and female within the police force. Obviously, at the same time, they start recording the self-ID of perpetrators of really violent crimes. But it's right the way through the police force. Standing for Women did a piece of research where we asked every single police force up and down the country, and those that complied to the Freedom of Information Act, actually, they do not differentiate between men or women, or rather men who call themselves women and actual women throughout their force. And that's down to each and every police constable, the chief of police, sorry, in every single force. So it really is quite rotten. And it all comes down to external bodies, lobby groups going in and just feeding the police a load of nonsense, and the police not doing their due diligence and just following it like sheep.
Yeah, it's quite disconcerting that the police kind of embrace this kind of system, isn't it? That they're rather enthusiastic participants in this kind of wokery, aren't they?
Yeah, it's really, really odd. So I had a police officer at my house when somebody had made a vile website about me with pictures of my kids, and I could barely get that police officer to leave my house. But he sort of said, well, it's your fault. If you will say things about women's rights, then what do you expect? But at the same time, they are just going along with this stuff. There's, burglaries are at an extraordinary rate. You had dog theft throughout lockdown, and I don't think people necessarily feel that safe with the police force. But it seems that they're more likely to knock on your door and have a go at you for misgendering than actually ensure that you are safe and sound on the streets of the United Kingdom.
And I also feel if you say you take someone like Karen White, who we have to stand by her rights as a woman, this is someone who is was sentenced for 2 counts of rape, 2 sexual assaults, 1 offence of wounding. She's got previous convictions for indecent assault, indecent exposure, gross indecency involving children, animal cruelty and dishonesty. Why do I have to give a damn about her rights?
Well, I have no idea. I certainly don't. I hope that he actually goes to a male prison.
You might say that, Kellie Jay.
Well, I hope that I have the privilege of being a guest on your show, that I'm not duty bound by the ridiculous wants of Ofcom or Ipso, whoever it is that governs you. But I certainly cannot. I just can't bring myself to call someone who's a rapist and a paedophile who's injured women and children. I cannot bring myself to say she, no matter what he calls himself.
Now, how am I going to respond? I'm going to respond to that by saying, I hear you, Kellie Jay. And thank you so much for your time.